Good morning and welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host, Danille, here with Ken.
What's going on, everybody?
We just got back from Naples.
Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
Yes. That was fun.
Really fun. And we were there for the collective.
Yeah, so you guys might know I do a high-end mastermind, and we have people flying in from all over the country, and we do 4 events a year with George Gammon, Jason Hartman. We had a bunch of speakers there. We have Jeff Snyder come, who's an incredible economist, and Dr. Radha Gopalan, a heart transplant surgeon, and we talked about health and wealth and all this great stuff and what are the differences, and we just got back last night. I'm tired.
Oh, yeah, we're tired. We got back in late last night and getting used to the time change.
It's beautiful down there, though. I got to tell you, Florida is wide open.
Yep.
So it's pretty neat. It's pretty normal. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it was really fun. We had a really good time. We did a beach party at the Ritz-Carlton, and that was kind of fun. And we, got Robert Kiyosaki out there dancing on the dance floor.
That was fun, yeah.
So, before we get started, make sure to hit the like button, as I tell you all every week. But also, we have the Airbnb webinar. It is February 23rd. It's kenmcroy.com/webinar. It is a great place to learn if you're considering Airbnb your property, whether it's an apartment that you're renting or a house that you own. We're going to cover all of that.
Yeah, I think it's important, especially now, guys, with these rising prices and rising interest rates, and the margins and the profits getting less. So you have to always have alternative options in your tool belt at all times.
Yeah. Plus, if you're, in an area that's rent controlled, Airbnb might be a good option for you. Our realtor was telling us she Airbnbs one of her smaller properties in Scottsdale and makes way more money than her long-term rentals.
Way more. I think she was doing like $7,000 to $9,000 a month.
Yep.
Or something on a small place. So yeah, that's not net, but nonetheless, it's just good to have the information and know how to do it.
Yep, and it's really good when you get started to know what you're doing, like anything else, because nowadays you can't just open an Airbnb rental with your old furniture in there. You have to furnish it and make it nice. So before you make that big investment, it's good to learn from some people that are doing it and doing it well, if it makes sense for you.
Yep.
So today we are going to be chatting about where not to invest in 2022's housing market.
Yeah, this is a big topic. So at the collective event, a lot of these people all of them are wealthy. They're all accredited, and they're talking about these second, third tier markets. And so we thought this was a good topic because I think a lot of people are a little shocked as to the prices. They're a little shocked and they're confused about some of these core areas that used to be good areas, and maybe they still are, but they're getting priced out of some of the markets. So people are starting to look at secondary, third tier markets, and we're hearing all kinds of stuff. So I thought this is a good topic for today.
Yeah, I mean, especially being at the collective event this weekend and talking to some of the investors there, even some of them were confused as to where they should be investing.
Yeah. I mean, and these are people that own a lot of doors. So These are not like new investors. These are people, everybody's looking for that next spot. Like, in fact, the question was, what's emerging? What's the next emerging market, and where is it, and where are people going? And so it's a good topic.
Yeah. So the number one thing that you need to watch out for when you're investing is what they call up and coming areas that aren't proven.
Yeah.
So that's something we hear a lot. Like one of the members of the collective was telling me that she's looking to invest in Alabama and that her realtor is telling her it is a up and coming area.
Yeah. And it might be. So, when we talk about an up and coming area that's not proven, what that means is that are you going to be a pioneer? Are you trying to some of the basic fundamentals that underpin an area that gets high growth, and rental growth is of course based on people growth to the area. So you have to take a look. If a town has like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is on fire right now, but that town I want to say is about 50,000 people. So if 10,000 people move there, which isn't a lot, like in Phoenix. If 10,000 people move there, that's a 20% increase. So you're going to look at that percentage and you're going to go, oh, they had a 20% growth. Now, 10,000 is a lot for a 50,000 person or for 50,000 town population. And it definitely puts a lot of pressure on all the resources that are there. But it's not necessarily a proven market, right? Because it could have a boom and bust. And so these markets that, we might be seeing a boom now, also what they do is they correct quickly.
Well, because I do remember back in 2006, everyone was moving to Maricopa, Arizona because it was an up and coming area.
And it was affordable.
And they were putting these really nice houses down there. And before, it was not a very nice area. But then when 2008 hit, it was the first area to completely clear because people start turning over their keys and just walking away.
And I think that's the lesson here. Not that Coeur d'Alene's going to bust or, some of these small towns. But as affordability starts to push itself, let's just say visually, to the edge of town, those edges are the first ones to go when things start to improve. That's what happens.
Right. So you're just kind of, it can be great, but you need to be careful and not take everyone's word for it that it's an up and coming town. And the other thing with up and coming is it's hard to know what your rental rates are going to be, how your vacancy is going to be, because there's nothing that was there to prove that.
And I'll give you an example. And hopefully I don't get in trouble from all my friends that are in this space. But right now, mobile home parks are on fire. And the reason they're on fire, if you think about it, is affordability. That's the reason. So, you think of custom house, regular house, apartment, mobile home, okay, and maybe not in that order everywhere. But it is a super affordable play. The mobile home industry, when things start to correct and people get have more disposable income and all that kind of stuff, and they start to, let's say, upgrade their lifestyle for whatever that might be, those are the areas that will be impacted first. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So if you're an investor and you're investing in somewhere, you could pick a try and true market or you can pick an up and coming market, but you just got to be careful with the up and coming market.
Yeah. And the one thing that I would be careful of, so over the years, I'll just pick on a few things. Like a lot of you might not be old enough to remember the oil and gas booms, let's say, like in Midland, Texas, or up in North Dakota, as an example. So during those times, when there's a lot happening, there's housing issues. There's, everything's the hotels are raising their rates. There's no housing, and they're doing temporary housing, and the people that own land or in those areas are killing it during that time. But then as oil prices go up, things start to retract. And so, Midland, Texas is a great example of that. And you can see sometimes the prices are really high, sometimes they're really low based on an industry. Now, so as things change, you have to be, those little towns like that, they dry up. And everybody asks, why weren't you going to Midland, or why weren't you going to the Balkan area up in Texas or up in North Dakota? I'm like, they're boom and bust towns. So you have to be really, really careful. These may not be permanent, long-term towns that will change forever, and you just got to look at them. And there's a lot of factors.
Yep. And just so you guys know, we can't go and tell you, invest in Florida or don't invest in North Dakota. Like, that's stupid. Anyone that's telling you that advice is stupid. We're giving you guidelines to look at so you know where to invest, so you don't have to listen to us or anybody else. You can do the research yourself.
Yeah. You think about, you guys, back up from the whole situation and think about things like unemployment. How far does somebody have to drive, to somewhere, to a city center for some of the basic services. Though all of those things are factors. High unemployment, and there is high unemployment all around the country right now.
Right.
So, you can just Google that. Google unemployment by municipality, by state, by city, by town, and you can see it. And you can see it in areas where there's a lot of areas where buildings and storefronts are literally boarded up, and people are moving out. So, I'll just on a big town like that is Portland. Portland, Oregon is in rough shape right now. Right?
Yep.
For lots of other reasons. But those are areas that people are moving away from. I am from the Northwest, so I can pick on it. So I have done lots of stuff in Portland, and I grew up in Seattle. So I know exactly what's happening there because I have friends and family that live there. And I know that there's, I'm not kidding you. I'm not even exaggerating when maybe one conversation a week, people are moving out of that area.
Yes.
Just in my circle, they're saying, I've had enough. This is happening. I can't go downtown anymore. I can't go to my favorite places anymore. So there are migrations happening. And so one of the things that you need to look for, and we talk a lot about, is net migration. Net migration means people moving in and people moving out. And be careful of some of these headlines, because I look at some of this stuff. Like I was doing this video last week on office buildings. And if you look at there's office building articles that say office buildings are back, they're going to do great, all this stuff. Well, if you dig a little deeper, like I did before I prepared for the video, it's not the case. And those articles can be written by anyone. They're on the internet. They could be written by brokers that are in the office space. They could be written by people that a lender. So you got to be very careful about where the source is coming from and try to dig a little bit deeper. And don't take a lot of this information, at face value. You have to do a lot of research.
Yes. And something else that you want to look at, places to not invest, are government policies that are not landlord friendly. Yeah. And that's just not at a state level. Like people think, Arizona's landlord friendly and New York isn't. But within a state, even if the state is landlord friendly, you can have cities and counties that are not landlord friendly.
Yeah. So these you think about. Municipalities and states are very, very different. So, everyone's fighting the same issue. They're fighting affordability. They're fighting homelessness. They're fighting greediness from the landlords. That's their perception. If you put your renter hat on, that's what it is. So people are frustrated and fired up, and they're right now they're blaming. We were just in Florida, and we were talking to the people that were help us put this event on the beach, and the server said my rent in Naples went up 40%, and so these things are happening, and so people are lashing out, and it's on the top of their mind. So the politicians are taking note. And they are going to start doing things to protect their citizens. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you guys, this is coming. So it's hard to know where, but if you're paying attention, you can see that these things creep onto ballots and things like that. So it's already passed.
On both sides.
On both sides, yeah.
It's not just, everyone always thinks that it's a one-side issue. It's not, it's a both side issue.
It is, yeah. It's... There are rent control already passed, as you guys know. There are rent caps around the country that are already passed, like in St. Paul, that are already done. 3% max cap. Okay, so if you're a renter, that's awesome. If you're an owner of a property and you're trying to do a value add, it's not so awesome. So, and both sides are affected. And so I think the landlord's going to lose this battle. I'm just telling you, as a landlord, doesn't matter. I'm telling you guys right now. So you need to be paying attention to these kinds of government policies. Another one is, if you think about it, the funding of the police. Now this is
before we get there, Brad had a good question from YouTube. He said, "What specifics should we look for in a landlord-friendly city or county?"
Yeah, well, one is if there's the landlord-tenant laws are very different in every state. Okay, so you could start there, and you can see, like in California, it's always been very difficult to get somebody out of a home that isn't paying. It's always been that way. So there's all kinds of information on the internet about this. Some states are considered, just type in landlord-friendly states per the landlord-tenant law. You got to start there. Then from there, you need to start looking at the politicians that are looking at these issues organically, and they're actually being discussed right now, like at the city council levels or at the state levels.
Yeah.
And those are at the county levels. Those are things that people are considering and looking at right now.
Right.
And so you might have to dig a little deep, take a look at some minutes, and take a look at some things. But this is coming, and and not only that, and I know we're going to talk about crime, but if a community is cutting back on and I'm not even taking a position here. I'm just saying if they're cutting back on defunding something, it affects something. So, and you're starting to see that in crime rates going up. So if you're a family that's moving somewhere and the crime rates are up, you might not go there. That's all. So don't get political here. It's just a fact. So, so those are things that are happening at the government level, and property taxes are also going up.
Well, and it has to be a little bit more specific. So, some of the city councils are discussing rent caps and rent control in these red states.
Yes.
And, yes, it's not a law yet, but these are issues and it is a problem, and you need to know what's going on in your municipality that you're looking to invest in and how much traction those things are getting, even if they're not passed yet. Also, there's a lot of talk about not allowing landlords to run credit checks.
Yeah, that's
something that's
really
coming through.
That's another one. Very good point. You imagine that.
Right.
Imagine you just having to rent to whoever.
And you have no idea if they paid their last landlord or anything else.
Those are out there. So you can go to National Apartment Association, NAA.HQ, NAAHQ.org, or the National Multi-Housing Council. Now, these are bigger groups, and they're not really around single family, but what they do is they represent landlords and renters. So it's a great organization to at least go there and look, and you're going to see the lobbying that's going on, and you might even want to join some of those just to stay connected. So this is all starting to bubble up right now, and I'm telling you, we're at the very, very beginning of what I consider to be a renter nation, and we have an affordability crisis, and those two things are not good for the renters, and they're not good for the city planners.
Yes. So another thing that you have to look out for when deciding where to buy. So you don't want an investment property and a place that is having a rise on crime.
Yeah. That seems obvious, but
I don't think people consider it necessarily when they're looking for an investment property. I mean, how many of you have considered it as you're looking at your numbers?
Yeah, it never used to be as big a thing. We do that. So in my acquisition meetings, which I have every Tuesday, we have an hour-and-a-half talk at our investment committee. And we have two analysts, my partner Ross and I, our head of property management, my COO, my acquisition guys. They're all on the call. We look at crime statistics every single call. So if we're looking at a property in Houston, as an example, because right now we're looking at several there, we're looking at the crime statistics in that particular area because they make a difference. And, and you'd be very surprised as what 1 or 2 miles can do. Literally, you can be 2 miles away or 1 mile away and have hardly any crime. And you can have crime very, very, back in the day, my dad used to call it the other side of the tracks, which is actually, I think, where I grew up. but the funny point is that these kinds of things are starting to pop up. And there's this saying called the broken window syndrome, which means that if there's a broken window, there's a perception about, and that doesn't necessarily, from a landlord standpoint, you're supposed to fix the graffiti and fix the broken window immediately. But if you don't, more starts to show up. And just pay attention to, the renter. If you buy something somewhere and it's a rough area and their kids can't play outside and the kids can't walk to school and it's not safe to go to your car, to go to the store, those kinds of things are real issues.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody gets carjacked around the corner, you can probably believe that a lot of those tenants, when their lease comes up, are going to want to get out of there because they don't feel safe. And we have a friend with an investment home in Venice Beach, and he wants to sell it because it's getting so bad. He wants to get out of there, and he can't find a buyer because nobody for the price point he wants to buy the home because of the crime and the homelessness.
He actually is underwater. So what that means is he paid more, but he can't get that price right now, and it's in Venice Beach,
like right on the beach.
Yeah, and so he can't get the amount of money, so he's stuck. Mm-hmm. He's stuck there.
And you don't want to be stuck.
No. So these are real things. So I can speak from personal experience from having properties in areas that I made mistakes on. And when tenants leases might look beautiful when they move in, but then in 6 months or 8 months or 10 months or 12 months they move out. If they perceive the area as not necessarily a good area, it's not everything that they thought, and maybe they didn't do the research in the beginning. And then on the multifamily stuff or even the commercial stuff, if there are problems like, honestly, broken windows, graffiti, car break-ins, those kinds of things. We've had murders at our properties. We've had all kinds of horrible things happen. This stuff happens. We've had arson. Those things happen. We've had sex offenders, all that kind of stuff. And this is all, the other side of what being a landlord is. Those things are, trust me, that word spreads through these communities like crazy. And all of a sudden, the renters, this is about the renters, they start to make choices as to where they want to be.
Yeah, they need to feel safe.
Yep, definitely.
So another thing to look at when you're going to buy is you don't want to buy in a place with undesirable or extreme weather.
Yeah, now this is an interesting one, but just think about it. Now, especially work from home, people have choices. Before they were kind of tethered to their job, and this hasn't gotten a lot of attention. But I have friends that are up in the Midwest or the Northeast, let's say, that are saying, I'm going to move to Florida. I'm going to move to California. I'm going to move to Nevada. I'm going to move to New Mexico, Arizona, because now I can work from home and go there and not have to live there. And so, you have those kinds of things that, are quality of life issues. Because the reason why California is so expensive, the reason why Florida is so expensive is because, and this is a complete guess, but you're going to have 340 to 350 great days a year to be able to go outside. And you just don't have that growing up in some of these other areas.
Well, to bring back up Idaho, a lot of Californians and people from Seattle have moved to Idaho over the last couple of years, and we don't know if they'll stay in Idaho.
Well, that's what I said. I was always cold. I was like, we'll just see if they can survive a winter, because I can tell you, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, one year there was 50 inches of snow, and the window is beautiful up there. You get about 4 months of really good weather. But the rest is kind of gloomy and snowy, and it'll be interesting. Those are big differences. So it could be, maybe, some of those people might make some different choices, but you never know. But the other thing is other kinds of weather, like Galveston, Texas, or Baytown, or some of these other areas in Houston even. You have these hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that can be problematic, from flooding and all that kind of stuff. And so people now, they used to kind of be stuck in areas, and I just think that they're going to start to take a look at some alternatives.
Yeah, another thing is with the extreme weather that people don't always realize is, like in Florida, a lot of people are looking to invest in Florida. Florida is a hot market right now. Florida has hurricanes, and hurricanes do a lot of damage.
Yep. And I will tell you, we looked at Florida a few years ago, and we still are. But one of the things in Texas, especially along the Gulf and Florida, insurance costs. All along, Louisiana, New Orleans, think about Hurricane Ike, Hurricane Ina, all that stuff. And there's been many others. And even up toward the Carolinas. Those are things that you have to consider if you're investing. The insurance prices from Phoenix to Florida are double. So, those are real costs, and they have to be considered. You have to look at all of those things as they generate your net operating income, of course. So, but those expenses can be, for a landlord, much, much different. And also from a renter standpoint, they might not want to go through that stuff.
And, if you do have damage and you do get hit with a hurricane or a tornado or flooding or anything else and you have a claim, it's not, as you know, super easy to deal with the insurance company to always get that paid really easily. And guess what? If you have a claim, your insurance prices go up a lot.
Trust me. I went all the way to the Texas Supreme Court for a hurricane I had in Baytown, Texas. And yes, I'm still looking in Houston for all of you. But so we still really like Houston because a lot of affordability and a lot of people are moving there. And Houston definitely gets hurricanes, that's for sure. But we also are very aware of the expense around that. And that you're right. What happens when you have millions of dollars in insurance proceeds? I have a friend that owns an insurance company. He said, we never, ever pay claims. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, we might give it to you, but we bill it back later. So he's like, in other words, it's always a net zero for them. They're, whatever their claim. It's the same with health insurance, guys. We have a few hundred employees. When somebody has a big claim for, God forbid something happens to somebody, it hits our policy, and that carrier looks at our premiums and increases them accordingly. That's how the system works.
And from someone that used to work in insurance follows your social security number, not the property. So it is going to affect you all the way around.
Right yeah.
Couple of funny comments or interesting comments from YouTube. Nick said no natural disasters for him. He's staying away from Florida. Yeah. And Adam said he lasted 4 years in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh, yeah.
So he might be a Californian person that moved there. I don't know. Anyways, so make sure you like the video. Try to help you guys out here. I know some of you might be frustrated. We didn't tell you exactly where to not invest. But like I said, it's too broad, right? A couple people asked about Indiana and a few other states. Those are all huge markets. Even trying to pin it down to Indianapolis is too big of a market. You need to look at everything we mentioned and then decide, is that a good place to buy or not? Because if you're going to listen to us or somebody else that tells you it is or it isn't, it's how you're going to get in trouble.
Listen, guys, the internet is full of people that will tell you to buy somewhere. And if you want to do that, that's up to you. But what we're trying to do is give you the tools to be able to ask and be able to assess when somebody tells you where to buy. That's actually way better for you, is to have the education. If somebody says invest in Indianapolis, you should be going down this checklist and then questioning the reasons. So it's easy for me to say, go buy here. And guess what? Some of you might do that. I might not be accurate. So you're better off to have more tools in your tool belt. These are the things I look at when we're looking to invest. We're looking at affordability. We're looking at crime. We're looking at migration patterns. We're looking at population growth. We're looking at job growth. We're looking at rental supply versus rental demand. We're looking at all of those things together. I'm looking at schools because families look for good schools. And in Texas, some of the best schools are in areas like Plano or Frisco right now. And this is all public information. When you're moving somewhere, think of your family. You are considering all of these things. They're all factors. So don't just get caught up when somebody says, go buy in El Paso and then do it. That is not investing. That is especially if it's not only your money. If it's somebody else's, it's even more risky. So you have to make sure that all these boxes are looked at, all these things are checked, and then you feel good about it.
And we always say trust but verify. So I hate to keep bringing up this person, but from the collective this weekend, I asked her if the numbers made sense, the rental numbers. And she said, yeah, they do. The realtor was telling me these are conservative numbers. I said, but have you verified the numbers? Do you know that that's the rental numbers? Because guess what? It's in the realtor's best interest for you to buy that home, and they might not really know. So you need to get on Zillow. You need to look at similar properties in the area. That's what we just did on ours that we purchased, and see what the real rental numbers are. What can you rent it for? How many rentals are listed in that area? Are they getting rented? Are they disappearing from Zillow? Because that's where a lot of small landlords list their properties. Are they just sitting on there for months and months and lowering? You need to know that to know if you're making a good investment.
Yeah, and if you're buying somewhere, hopefully you guys are buying from somebody who understands this. So, like we had a realtor. She I think we're gonna put her video up this week, Jerry, right? On here. She's an investor. She is a realtor, but she's also an investor. She does Airbnb, she does rentals. She looks for both. So she talks the talk, walks the walk. If you're buying from just somebody that's that is not invested, then they're looking for a commission. They don't understand the language. So if you're buying somewhere else, make sure that you're selecting your team members wisely, and they will be able to talk the talk with you. When when we're buying properties, we're running at a very fast pace, conversation wise, because the brokers understand what we're talking about. And so if you're just calling somebody because their name's on the sign, then that could be your problem.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So make sure if you're watching, you hit the like button. It really helps us out. Also, make sure that you sign up for the webinar on the Airbnb February 23rd. It's free. We're bringing 2 people on that are an expert in Airbnbs. That's all they do is manage them. We're going to show you how to get started, if your property would be a good property for Airbnb, and how to maximize your money. So it's kenmcelroy.com/webinar. So now we're going to jump into our premium questions.
Thanks, everybody, by the way.
And if you want to ask Ken a question, just go to kenmcelroy.com/premium. Premium Live gives you 7 days free.
Yep.
I'll put that in the show notes or in the conversation. So our first question comes from Jake. He said, in this economic climate with inflation running hot and being able to fix a cheap debt for 30 years, are there ever times where you can justify buying a rental where the rental income from the property doesn't cash flow and it's only enough to service the debt?
It's a good question. First of all, we don't know how long inflation is going to run. So apparently nobody knows.
Not even the Federal
I don't
Reserve.
think that you can bank on it being long term. I have my view. I just listened to Jeff Snyder this week. He has his view. We listened to Lynette Zhang. She has her view. George Gammon has his view. So I don't think you can bank on high inflation. But the one thing that I think you can bank on is that the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates because they've said so a lot. So I love the fixed rate debt piece. But I personally it depends on how you underwrote this. So I personally like some wiggle room. So in other words, if you're barely cash flowing at 100% vacancy, you're probably in trouble. You can't just bank on rent growth and because you also potentially could have some expense growth. So you got to be thinking about insurance rates. You got to be thinking about property taxes. You got to be thinking about these rising utility rates. So you also have both. So you're not just getting the income side. So if you've underwritten vacancy correctly, which is basically you have to reduce your potential income for turnover and stuff like that. Then and it is tight and it's maybe a value add, then I like that idea. But if it's too tight, I don't think you should bank on inflation growing the value of your place, because I think inflation's also going to grow the expenses. And I don't know what's happening in your area from a rental income standpoint. Right. I think every landlord that wants things to work tries to slam a renter in, and they're like, I can get another one, no problem. And then, they realize that one renter moves out, there's a bunch of work to be done, labor's tight, turnover costs are higher, vacancy rates higher, trying to get labor there is longer. So, so if you have something that's maybe a couple grand a month, you got 30 days, you're toying with $75 a day per day, and then you got your marketing costs and the moving costs and all the, and the timing of the new person. So there's a lot going on between move outs. And
so you're basically saying you don't want to do that. It's not great.
Yeah. So thank you.
Just summarizing. Philip from Premium wants to know, who do you recommend to hire to evaluate potential properties to make the best decision that is not commission based, to look at the numbers and say, does this cash flow?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. So there's lots of real estate clubs around that you can be involved in. There's stuff on Facebook. I know we have, through our collective, we have a lot of activity through our forums. You got to look for real estate forums. I got to tell you, I've been really impressed with the amount of, there's some sales, but sometimes when you put something out on the internet, you do this all the time.
Oh yeah, I get tons of.
Yeah, you get tons of feedback. So I find that putting your having something and sticking it out there, you're gonna get some pretty good. You're gonna get some pretty transparent, I think, answers in that particular area. What you want to find is, again, you want to find somebody who's invested, somebody who's actually an investor, maybe even a mentor or somebody that's in the area that is already doing it.
Yeah, that's the best person to ask. It's not who you hire, it's who you find that can help. Yeah. And there's plenty of people that want to help. And, it's just like with anything, you want to get a few opinions. But, if you hire, like you had listed a property management company, it's kind of in their best interest to tell, what I mean, to make it sound appealing,
that's
right?
That's a good point. The property management companies, I think, are not highly thought of during this process. But you think about it, they, that's why my head of my property management company, she's always, you guys have met her, you've seen her, Leslie, we have crazy arguments over rents because, she knows whatever I buy, she's got to perform. So, it's this push-pull, which is healthy. So, she's not going to sell something on a higher rent than she's going to be able to get.
Right.
Or, sell me. So she's going to always look at it from a conservative side. The property manager does. And the investor or the realtor is going to look at it more on the aggressive side. So my acquisition and my head of property management could not be more different. He's over here going, this is where rents are going to be. And she's over here going, no, that's not true. And, it's probably somewhere in the middle. So the property manager is a very good resource.
Yes. So Rohit from Premium, I hope I'm saying that right, please let me know if I'm not, said that they have 5 rental properties in and around the Bay Area, all cash flowing. 3 are single family, 2 are condos. They want to get out of their condos and convert them to single family because they're not a big fan of the HOAs and things like that,
Yep.
but they're cash flowing. So what should they do?
Well, I don't know the numbers. So for me, it's all, as you guys know, I like to say it's just math. So I like to take a look at the age of the condos, for example. So if you have a 30-year-old condo, 50-year-old condo, which is entirely possible in San Francisco, you might have some high capital work that's needed on that, and therefore you have some reserve issues. Maybe your HOA costs are going to go up, all that kind of stuff. So you have to look at all those things. Plus, you have to look at your potential rent growth on those kinds of things. But it sounds to me like you've already made those decisions. The only thing that I know to do is to, one, sell that and eat the capital gain, and or two, do a 1031. 1031 exchange, we've talked a lot about. Eric Freeman, one of our advisors on kenmcelroy.com, talks a lot about that. I think that he even goes into more detail behind the premium wall, which we've got some videos on premium for that. So the 1031 exchange is pretty cut and dry, and you can definitely do that. If you do that, you're going to want to make sure that you have a replacement property in mind before you sell yours. So what I found on 1031s is that most people don't. I would say the majority. The majority of people sell something, put it into an exchange account, trying to avoid tax, and then they scramble and they make bad deals on their next asset. So you want to make sure that you know if the decision to sell the 2 condos is something that you're going to do. You're going to want to make sure that you have the replacement now, or at least you guys know where you're going to put that money, and then roll it in through the 1031. So you want to have both kind of tracking at the same time. It's a good question.
So Garrett has a great question on premium. He has a property, and he helps his father manage his 50-plus units. He's listened to all your books, read all your stuff. What are some actionable steps that he should take to become a syndicator himself? And does it make sense to start with smaller units, like 12 to 20 units?
Yeah. So for those of you who might not know, a syndicator is somebody that goes out and raises other people's money to buy real estate. Now, obviously not just real estate, but syndicating, putting together a network of people, a syndicate of investors to buy something. It could be actually a business. It could be whatever it is. But the big issue, again, is not... first of all, the decision to syndicate, I think, is a good one, but you're only going to be as good as the deal you buy. So, if you have, let's say, 10 people that trust you to do something, and whatever you buy does not work, that's going to be your last deal. So the issue is really not necessarily, okay, I'm ready to syndicate. It's the deal itself. So because what happens is if you have a really good deal, then the syndication part is actually quite easy. So it's not exactly easy, but, again, we have also videos on this with Mauricio Raoul, ironically, is one of our advisors for kenmcelroy.com. He's a syndication attorney. There's a lot to it, and it's important that you know how to do it. I get that. But at the end of the day, it only matters that what does the investor want? They want a return on their money. So raising the money and putting all that structure, all that stuff is really, really, really important. You do it right. But it doesn't mean anything if the deal that you think is going to, that you're syndicating does not work. And when it does work, that's when the magic happens. And that's when they say, okay, let's go do that again.
So Matthew from YouTube had a good question. He said, one thing I've never heard people discussing is all these people that have remortgaged their homes may have overspent.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It's definitely something that could be the situation. That right now, credit's cheap, guys. Like, in my opinion, one of the reasons the Fed says we're raising rates and gives everyone the heads up is so that they go consume today.
Yes.
That's what my belief is. So why else would they do that? Why would they say, hey, I'm raising rates soon. What are you guys going to do? Oh, I better go fix. I better go refinance. I better go. So that's what's happening right now. So the GDP is looking good, guys. Nice job. The Fed is scaring all of us to tell us to go do all this stuff, and it's working. So the challenge to answer the question is, what does the appraiser appraise it at? What is the loan? How's the loan? How much of a leverage? One thing I don't believe though right now is I don't think that we're going to see a big decline in home prices.
Yeah, even if they raise the rates.
Yeah, so I still believe that, Some areas are. Don't get me wrong. So, again, I don't want to be so specific, but I know for a fact that, just like we just talked about with Venice Beach as an example, not every market is the same. The U.S. is not one market, and either is a state. So either is a city. So you have to look at those individually and kind of take a look at the basics. Population growth, job growth, and supply affects home values. Are people moving in, people moving out? And real estate will go down in markets that people are moving out, and there's and the vacancy goes up or the inventory goes up, and real estate prices will go up in markets where there's people moving to and there's not enough supply.
So Charity has an interesting question from Premium. She said her dad has a small mobile home park, 40 homes, 10 lots. He's ready to retire. She wants to take it over, and she's going to pay him 25% of the rents as payment. Her and her husband live 2 hours away. They don't have time to, be there all the time. So do they hire a property management company, or can they just hire a few handymen and then drive up there, here and there to fix things?
That's a really good question. First of all, what a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Honestly,
awesome.
Yeah, that's a nice gift that your father has given you. I would take a look at the tax consequence. I'm not a tax person, but I know that there are some ways to transfer properties between family members, and so you might want to look into that. But on the other, to answer your question directly on the management, so we have a handyman, Larry. We love him. We call him for everything, right?
Yes.
And, we're able to piece it together. Now, you have 40 tenants. It might be a little different. So it depends on the tenants, depends on how long they've been there, depends if they're paying rent on time. There's a bunch of other decisions that can suck you into a property. But if it's running really well, you have a lot of tenants that are paying on time, and the place is pretty well maintained, you could probably do it with a handyman and spot checks, would be my guess. But if it's a little more intense, maybe you got some vacancies, maybe you got some tenants in there that you're having a problem with, and maybe you have some capital work and that kind of stuff, you're probably going to have a lot more work than you anticipate. So it's going to depend on the property and the condition on takeover. So those are if your dad's owned it that long, my guess is it's probably cash flows pretty well. And so you might be better off hiring just somebody local that can help you so you don't have to make that drive and pay that, $750 a month or $1,000 a month to have somebody like on call.
Well, I know with Larry, between our properties, we have him every Friday for X amount of hours, because if you have a good handyman, especially right now, they're busy, right? So you have something urgent and they say, well, I can get you in 3 weeks. Well, that doesn't help you. Yeah. That's where the property management company comes in, if you have one, because they can make things more urgent with their team. But if you have this handyman on call for X amount of hours every Friday or whatever the day is, then you'll probably use them. With 50 units, you're probably going to be using them. So,
guys, we have a lot of stuff that, Danille's got a bunch of rentals, and I've got stuff at my homes and things that I'm doing. And so Larry dedicates Friday to us.
Yeah.
Every Friday, and I pay him his hourly wage. I'm not negotiating something, and he just knows. He's like, you guys are got me doing so much, I just dedicate Friday to you. So, and then we don't always know what he's going to do on Friday, but we always give it to him like Wednesday or Thursday before, and then he's running around and he's doing all that stuff for us. So there are lots of ways to do this. The real issue is, how much time will that take you? How well managed is the property today? You could be, it might be a tough conversation because you might not think it's running well, and you're getting it from your father, who might think it is running well.
Well, considering he's the property manager currently, which I didn't mention.
Yeah. So that could be an interesting Thanksgiving. But anyway, it's the same. It's just management, and so he probably, knowing that, he's probably running it pretty darn well. He probably knows everybody by name, and he probably has a great reputation, would be my guess, over the years. So, but again, it's just time. It's time, especially if you guys are working.
Yeah,
So,
and they have kids.
Yeah, so 2 hours, guys. That's just consider one day. So 2 there, do what you got to do. 2 back with a family. It's worth the expense. But what a great opportunity to step into that.
Yes. Nick from Premium said he's looking to buy a duplex as an investment property. He's not going to live there. He hasn't been able to find a lender that will lend to an LLC. They'll only offer the 5-year fix to the LLC. Is it safe to finance the home in my personal name, get a fixed 30-year loan, and then 90 days later put it into an LLC?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say a lot of times what banks will do is they can threaten to pool the loan. I haven't seen them do that, but they can do that. They are allowed to do that. You may want to wait 12 months. That's kind of the advice that was given to me, is you might want to wait 12 months before you put it into an LLC.
Yeah. So also, just as a point here, remember the bank, the LLC, a new LLC has no credit, 0. So think of, if you're the lender, would you lend to something like that? They want you. They want the pound of flesh from you. So the LLC is for asset protection, not necessarily getting around the actual lender issue. The lender wants, they want the property if something happens. So the asset protection is very different than the loan.
Yes. So Jake from Premium, this is a very interesting question. He said, in one of your books, you state a bedroom community is not a good place for an investment property. So bedroom community, what did you mean by that? Like a sleepy town?
I have no idea.
Okay.
So I wrote that so long ago. I'm just joking. So what I might have been talking about is, sometimes like rentals in a big single family community, aren't necessarily that welcomed, right? In HOA managed, those kinds of things.
Got it. So his question is, I believe that in my town, it would be a great location, even though it's defined as a bedroom community. My reasoning is that the above average school district is what is bringing people to the town, and there's few rentals available. I've run the numbers, and there could be good cash flow. I also see messages on social media about people asking for available rentals and can't find any. There's only 2 listed on Zillow. What are your thoughts?
100%. Yeah,
Okay.
You said all the right things. So that's exactly the research that I want everyone to be doing. So it sounds to me like you've done some really good. The math has to work, but if you have pent up demand, school districts are top rated, crime's low, all those other things that you had mentioned, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because especially now, the one thing that can throw that off is one big employer moving out, or maybe a big apartment community or something being built in the area. So you want to look at those things and make sure that all that's stable, because additional supply can disrupt a rental market, and a big industry moving out of an area can also disrupt a rental market.
Yeah, and you said all the right things. You live there, so you understand the market. So you're understanding. You're not trying to invest in a sleepy town that you don't understand.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually going to help you too, because renters largely are local. So and because it sounds to me like there's a lot of demand, I would come out kind of aggressive on the rate.
Yep.
So don't be afraid in the beginning to set the rates a little bit high, maybe even higher than what the market is, if there's a waiting list.
Yes. So for those of you watching, make sure you hit the like button. Would love to get up over 300. Also, make sure you check out the webinar on the 23rd, kenmcelroy.com/webinar. We're going to be discussing all about Airbnb, getting started in Airbnb, and if Airbnb is right for you. It's free, so make sure you join.
I have an announcement. I have one announcement.
Oh, you do? You didn't run it by me.
I know.
Oh.
But you knew about it.
What is it?
We have a happy hour.
Oh, for Premium.
Yes, a premium happy hour we're doing on February 21st with Mauricio. So,
who is our syndication attorney.
Yes, so we got a $500 an hour guy. We're going to do a happy hour for premium members. So don't forget to sign up for that. It's free for the premium members, of course. So that's going to be cool. We're going to literally grab a bottle of wine, and I'm going to grill them on all kinds of legal stuff. And then you can also send your questions in. So
if you're premium.
Yeah.
You should sign up for premium so that you can join, which is kenmcroy.com/premium.
If you want free access to an attorney, a very smart attorney, then this is the time. You're going to want to tune in for that one. That's going to be fun. We're going to do a happy hour every month.
With a different guest.
Yeah, for premium. Next month, we already have Eric Freeman, our tax guy, booked. And then the month after that, surprise guest.
We'll let you know. I'll let you know. Anyways, so thanks for joining today. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.